Welcome back to Making It. I'm Morgan, and today we're going to be doing two types of poor man's burn ends. We're going to be doing one using pork belly, we're going to be doing another one using a beef chuck roast. So let's get to it. Alright, so first things first, we're going to take our pork belly and we're going to cut it in half so we have approximately the same size cut as we do for our beef chuck roast. You always want to make sure you're using a sharp knife to make cuts easier and it's safer. So for now we're going to set that aside. We're going to throw the other half of our pork belly in a bag, save that for another video. Alright, with the other half of the pork belly put away, we're going to go ahead and work on this. First things first is we're going to look for any pieces that are hanging off like this. Because over time, these little pieces are just going to burn, and it's going to be bitter in the end. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to make sure that we don't have too thick of a fat cap. If the fat is too thick, what happens is you don't get enough smoke, and the seasonings don't take to your meat. So we're going to go ahead and take that off now. All you need to do is get a hold of it, angle your blade up. That way you don't cut into the meat. This is a cut of meat that's traditionally cured and used as bacon, but today we're just going to slow cook it on the pellet grill. This soft fat here, you also want to get rid of because it's just going to get really chewy during the cooking process. Today I'm using a Victorinox soft blade knife. Helps to bend when you're trying to push into the meat to get the knife underneath those fat layers. There you go. Now with most of that fat cap removed, both the rub and the smoke will actually get down into the meat. Don't worry about removing the top because you still have all the fat that runs through the pork belly. It's still going to come out really soft and tender. Okay. Alright, with our pork belly all cleaned up, squared off, and all the loose ends taken care of, we're going to go ahead and season it up. Today we're going to be using the Yardbird by Plowboy. It's got some sweet flavor to it. It's got a little bit of sugar, onion, celery, salt, and garlic. And we're just going to get a nice layer on here. We're going to give it just a second, and we're going to be looking for the dark patches where the salt starts to react with the surface of the meat. We're going to flip it over. We're going to get the other side. Don't worry about missing the meat and getting a bunch on your cutting board. I'm going to show you how to use that here in just a second. All that seasoning that falls off is good to help get the sides of your meat. You want to make sure you get the rub on as many surfaces as possible to maximize flavor. When that rub starts to tack up, you start to see the meat change color a little bit. So you know you're good to go. So what we're going to do, we're going to go ahead and set this aside. Next we're going to work on the chuck roast. Alright, with the pork belly ready to go, now we're going to work on the beef chuck roast. So kind of like with the pork belly, we're going to take a look at it, see if there's anything hanging off that's going to burn during the cooking process. And this roast actually looks pretty good to go. So we're going to be using Ben's Bangin Brisket by RecTeq. It's got some sweet sugar notes and some spicy cayenne pepper to it today. And because we're doing poor man burn ends, which is usually something that comes off of a brisket, this will hopefully carry over some of those flavors. And again, kind of like with the pork belly, don't be afraid to go heavy with the rub. These are thicker, heavier cuts of meat. I'm not going to over season it. All the meats that I'm using here today were purchased at our local Costco. Most of their meats usually come pretty well trimmed up and ready to go. You'll see more of those products in upcoming videos. Anywhere where the meat starts to separate, go ahead and try and get some rub in there too. All you're doing is adding a little bit more flavor. And now we're going to let that sit. Give these about 30 minutes to set up. And then we'll be putting them out on the smoker. See you guys then. Alright, with both cuts of meat seasoned up, we're going to let them sit out. Got them covered with saran wrap. We're going to let them chill a little bit while we get our smoker up to temp. Today I'm using the wide pellet app on my RecTeq RT-680. All you got to do is swipe to turn it on, set your temperature, and let it come up to temp. When we get out there, we'll be using the temperature probes to monitor the internal temperature of the meat as it cooks. See you guys at the grill. First we're going to put our chuck roast on. And then we'll put our pork belly down, the fat side down. Go ahead and put in the meat probes. Make sure we get to the middle of that thickest part of the meat. Meat probes in place, we can see the current temperature since the lid is open, and the internal temperatures of our different pieces of meat. I have the alarm set to go off at 165 internal for both. At that point in time, we'll cube them up and continue with our poor man burn ends. Alright, so it's been about 3.5 hours. Both cuts of meat got up to about 170 before we pulled them. What we're going to do now is we're going to cut them into about 1.5 inch cubes. Then we're going to throw some Kinder's organic mild barbecue sauce on them. We're going to turn the RecTeq up to about 300 degrees and put them back out for another 30 minutes. So let's get started with that. With the chuck roast, we're going to follow some of these natural lines where it's started to fall apart already to make the shaping of the cubes a little bit easier. You can see where the meat started to take in the smoke by the size of the smoke ring there. This is already safe to eat. It's come up to a safe temperature. However, it hasn't quite hit that fall apart point yet. Still got a little bit of tension there. When we put it back on the grill, we're going to get it up to about 195 to 205, and at that point in time, this meat will start to just fall apart. pork belly, because of its square shape, is going to be a little bit easier to cube up than the chuck roast was. We're just going to slice this into 1 to 1.5 inch thick strips and then cross cut. Alright, with everything cubed up, what we're going to do now is we're just going to put our sauce on. Make sure everything gets a nice little coat. Then we'll give them a quick toss, and then back in the smoker. You don't want to go too heavy and drown them, because all you're trying to do here is create a nice sticky layer. Something that with the heat of the smoker will start to caramelize and char up. Make sure you get the sauce on all sides. We're ready to move on to the pork belly one. So now what we're going to do is we're going to put these in the smoker, give them 30 minutes at 300 degrees, and then we'll be back when we're done. Alright, it's been 30 minutes. We went ahead and pulled these off the grill. Barbecue sauce is tacked up. The pieces are nice and sticky. Everything's got a nice little caramelization to it. The pork belly, because of the fat content, didn't char quite as much as the chuck roast did. But the chuck roast, you can see, still retains some of the bark and pulls apart like a well done brisket does when you get to that same 200-degree temperature. Alright, let's give these guys a try. We're going to start with the chuck roast. It feels like a brisket burnt end. Falls apart in your mouth, nice and tender. Got that great smoke flavor from the RecTeq. The Bangin brisket gives it a really good spice. And then the barbecue sauce just cuts through that with the sweetness. We're going to try the pork belly. Pork belly is probably my favorite. Barbecue sauce brings a sweetness to it. That Yardbird by Plowboy is such a great rub. Just all those real rich notes of barbecue. Either one of these, whichever one you guys want to do at home, sure they're going to be a hit at your next barbecue. I'm Morgan. Thank you for joining us today on Making It. See you guys next time. If you guys got any comments or questions, leave them down below. Don't forget to hit the like and subscribe buttons, and we'll see you guys next time on Making It.